Welcome to Glow, the podcast that illuminates your path to personal transformation. I'm Jessie Moss, your guide, author, and intuitive healer, here to help you crack wide open and glow from the inside out. I'm so excited that you're here. You are not alone. Let's walk this path together. Welcoming you into episode 7 on the Glow podcast. Today, we talk about developing your intuition. We're going into the inner world. We will be challenging and changing our belief systems so we can start to rewire the brain to have a different outcome, becoming curious to what beliefs are even yours to hold on to in the first place and getting some clarity around that, as well as speaking into the void of transition, which I feel like once we break that down and really understand it, we can relate to what part of change that we're in and start to bring our focus more to the direction that we're going rather than to where we've been. So if you're ready to dive into learning your intuition in a whole new way, get to know yourself and your forgotten gifts and bring them back from your inner world, to know the patterns of these awakenings and how they're translating in your life and where you may be at right now. If you're searching for clarity, this episode is going to be helpful in assisting you to bring in perhaps a zoomed out view to what has felt challenging or difficult. Before we get into breaking down any patterns and talking about belief systems, it's really important that we address trust within the self. Because if there is no trust within the self, if you're not trusting of other people, then it makes it very hard to tap into your intuition. It also makes it more difficult to trust that thread that you're on and the direction that you're going. So you may also be second guessing yourself a lot. So we want to cut out the noise today with this episode. What I mean by following the thread is if you've ever started to set boundaries, say no to things, think about what your needs are, those kind of things, if you start to really follow insights that you've had, whether it's from a gut instinctual point of view or whether it's from a dream that you had or just a knowing, there's many different ways that we can actually access our intuition. And when you start to listen and follow that, you will find more synchronicities showing up, and there will be more of a felt sense that there is a deeper connection towards yourself. So to establish this, we're talking about, if we're relating to energy centers here, we're talking into the third eye. So the seat of intuition, meditation. So if you struggle to even find stillness, it may even feel very difficult to connect with yourself, with watching your thoughts, with feeling the sensations in your body. And we're all at different stages of our learning. We're all at different stages of accessing expanded consciousness to our patterns, to our behaviors, to our beliefs, all of these things. So if we can't find trust within ourselves and be still enough to listen, then it's hard to connect to know what the next piece of the puzzle may be or to follow that thread. So every time I say follow the thread, this is what I mean. It means making those choices to honor yourself in a way that you know is from a soul aspect of yourself, not just a quick fix or something that's easier to do because it's not uncomfortable right now. It's like saying that hard thing, doing that hard thing, showing up in integrity, knowing how to discern between what makes your energy stronger and what depletes your energy. So this may be good right now just to reflect on any areas of life where you're feeling drained or depleted. And if you're not all the time, if there's any situations that you go into or that you have none of that energetic vitality left after certain situations or interacting with certain people or doing certain activities. So it's important to just start to see from that zoomed out perspective and to be curious. So curiosity towards how much do I trust myself? The other piece of the puzzle that I like to mention before we go deeper into this is to know that we can't just wake up and trust ourselves one morning. It's a process, especially if at younger ages that we were shown
or told that we were wrong all the time. And so it became hard to follow that instinctual nature that we do have. And we all have this inbuilt navigational system that we all access in different ways. Same as intuitive gifts, where people can be more visual, some people can be more audible, some people just have that knowing or that feeling, that visceral feeling in their body to something. And so how are we supposed to listen to that when perhaps by parents or whoever we've been around or schools we've been in have said that it's weird or wrong to be like that? So we've turned away from it, we've turned it off. And this episode today is just mostly to reignite that spark to that place, to that connection you have with yourself. And if we can create stillness to step number one, maybe just being curious to, do I trust myself, and what may be blocking that trust? Because if you want your intuition to come through, it could be a process, especially if you've turned it off or you've not been supported in keeping it alive, keeping connection to it, which is super common in the society that we live in now today. And the next piece is support. So is the environment that you're living in or that you're occupying or that you're going in and out of, is the environment that you know, is that conducive to you developing your intuition? Is that going to be a problem if you start to uncover patterns that don't serve you anymore? Is there going to be an issue if you start to discern what your truth is a little deeper and you start to make decisions away from what's been known? Do you have people around you? Do you have a supportive environment? There is a piece that I wrote about healing CPTSD and the environments that we put ourselves in. And basically, I found personally that I couldn't heal to the depth that I wanted to when I wasn't surrounded by an environment that allowed me to feel safe enough to go to those places. And I'll attach the article into these show notes in case you're interested in reading that. So not only is environment linked in with support, so is our clarity of perception. So we start to see things and voice things. Is there people and reflections around us that is going to support what we're seeing and allow us to have our own opinion? And then the next piece of support is, can you receive? I had spoke about receiving in episode number 5. And if we can't receive or fill our own cup up, how are we supposed to give? So it's like this ability to give and to receive and to know when you're out of balance with either of those things. So if you can't receive, if you don't practice receiving in a supportive way, how can you receive and open to something much greater than ourselves, to our intuition, to that vast, open, limitless space that we can tap into in that inner world where it's never ending, it's unlimited? How can we receive anything from there if we don't know how to let that in? This is why trust and support go hand in hand when we're developing our intuition. These can be two big blocks that I see to really accessing believing yourself and uncovering these challenges and changing these beliefs. It's not easy work, and it's not fast either. There's no quick fix to this, and there's no one that can really tell you the specific way that it's going to happen for you. I feel like it is your own unique journey to travel through that, and people will help you along the way. Teachers will appear. You might hear a podcast like this. This can be a piece of the puzzle too. So if you've already sensed that anything that I've said could be a block for you, maybe pause this and take a moment to just write things down, use your journal, get curious to why there's no trust or where the patterns come from. Try to feel into any ways that you are not supported, any ways that you are supported, and start to just explore. So now that we've established we need trust and support to really tap into our intuition and that connection with ourselves, because perhaps it wasn't safe to when we were kids, perhaps it hasn't been safe to in adult relationships. And so rather than cutting that part of ourselves off or hiding from it or forgetting that part of ourselves temporarily, we're now kind of opening to all aspects of self. All parts of us belong. There's no part of us that doesn't belong in this present moment. although sometimes they don't belong here with us in the present moment and they're stuck in the past because they believe that they're wrong or bad, or they're blaming themselves. There's something happening to those parts. So we allow all parts of ourselves to belong. Perhaps even the belief that we have that being intuitive is quirky or weird or not okay, and starting to explore, well, do I want to tap into that? And also maybe take notes to where you receive well, or perhaps areas that you could work on in receiving. Let's dive into, now that we've established that kind of base, and it's not your fault if there's certain parts of you that are struggling to tap into your intuition, to just know that it is that process. And once we've got a bit more clarity to those first steps, then we can start to uncover any patterns of our looping behavior. Perhaps you already know quite a lot about the things that you no longer want to do, or the things you no longer want to believe. And the thing with patterns is that it's a pattern. It's a cyclic looping. It will show up time and time again. And this is the way that our learnings and our lessons come across to us. And perhaps each layer, it gets deeper until we've really had enough of that thing. So, for example, if you've not trusted your intuition time and time again, or you end up in the same situation, and every time you get into that, there's that thought in your head, or there's that voice that says, aha, I told you this was a bad idea, and you did it anyway. When you are experiencing that, it means that there may be a reason or a lack of trust in self. So knowing that these patterns will show up, and they're not showing up to make you feel bad, they're showing up to help you to learn. And if you take it as a learning and as a lesson, then the gifts from that will start to flourish. You'll start to connect with yourself a little bit more, because there'll be a bit more acceptance to the situation, perhaps more awareness. So that piece of awareness is what brings us closer to being in alignment to what's true for us, who we truly are, following the thread, knowing that making the decisions that we're making and those choices shaping our everyday life, small choices, make the big changes. And so when we're traveling through this change, if you've had an awakening in whatever form that has come through for you, we've spoke about this through previous episodes. So whether it's illness, injury, whatever's happened in your life that's shaken you up, whether you've actively gone and sought that change, whether you've become aware of a pattern that you no longer want to do, isn't serving you, so you do something drastic to shift it, or whether you're working with a coach and it's this gradual kind of micro stepping that you're doing. There's all different ways to go enter into change, and a lot of the time it can be unexpected, so it's unknown, there's fear around it. These are all normal experiences to change. We are meant to change. Change is inevitable. It is part of our nature to evolve, but it also is like that paradox of, we don't know what's on the other side of that. We don't know if we're going to lose people. We don't know if we'll be accepted. We don't know if we'll be judged. Whatever our fears are will come up in this situation of change. If you've ever been on the threshold of that, you have a choice to sink back into a pattern, because you know how that loop is going to turn out. You've been there before. You know exactly what that choice is going to do for you. It feels safe. It feels known. But there may be an aspect of you that doesn't want to choose it, but you'll choose it because it's comfortable. Or you get to that edge and you have a choice to go forward, not really knowing what's on the other side. And this is where that trust piece comes in. Do you trust yourself enough? Do you trust something bigger than you enough? This is the inner world. This is that connection to source or God or whatever you call it. If you can trust in that, have faith over fear, and actually receive more times and often, you'll go through this void of transition. So this is the piece I'm going to break down for you today. So when you're on that very edge of change and you're at that fork in the road. Will I go back to the known, whether it's a comfortable relationship or there's still some codependency involved there, whatever it is, this pattern? Or am I breaking away from that? And no matter the circumstances here, I choose to align to what I know somewhere, whether it's in my heart, in my gut, just a knowing, that intuition, whether I'm going to trust that enough to spill myself forward into that fully and be present with that. This point as well, before I break down the stages of a transition through change, is I feel like a lot of people will seek to be told these answers. And this is where that discernment piece comes in, under trust, under support as well. When you're discerning from this place, it's not linked to another person's intuition. It's not linked to someone else's value system. It's not linked to what another person believes. It's very much linked to your connection to source, to God, to your inner world, that very expansive, vast, unlimited, boundless space where you can actually receive so much. Moving through change is a place that I work in often. So I work with a lot of people that are experiencing fear to the unknown, chaos in their life, things just feeling like they're falling apart completely, and they're just not knowing what direction to take. So they're not sure of their purpose anymore. They're questioning, who am I? It's like this big awakening has happened and they're not sure what to do with it. They're not sure how to even choose themselves or where to start. So this will be a great guide and a starting point for you if you are also just on that verge of change. And as I go through these 6 stages, one stage will feel more apparent to where you're at. If you're choosing growth, if you're choosing personal development, if you're choosing to evolve yourself. So stage 1, and I've broken this down in my book Open. So I will also leave a link for this book in the show notes. You can get this online in many different places if you were just to Google Open by Jessie Moss as well. So the stages of transition. Stage 1 is falling apart. So this is the breakdown stage. So you get to fall apart and everything gets to rebuild itself. The foundations that you were once on may be gone or crumbling, and this is potentially probably the scariest part when it first starts to peel away. And it just feels like things may be starting to become really out of your control. And if you're someone that is used to controlling everything or having a set way to do things and sticking to your routine because it feels safe, then this can be absolutely terrifying. So it's totally valid. And I'm acknowledging that this is a very hard part. It's not ideal to wake up and just say, well, I'm going to fall apart today. This is going to be a great time, because it's not. It's not going to be a great time. If we were to look at the polarity of the human existence, it's going to be hard and beautiful at the same time. It's going to be messy and it's going to be reorganizing. It's going to be many different things all at once. It's how you perceive the situation when you go through enough awakenings, how you perceive everything that's going on, that maybe it's in divine order. Maybe you're not sure what's happening, but you have that faith over fear. You have that faith that you are connected to that part of yourself enough that you know that everything that you do will be in alignment to shape into what is meant for you in a way that you've actually chosen. In this first stage of falling apart, I find it useful to look to all the things that I can control, which is my daily choices, which is the food I put in my body, which is the people I interact with, which is the material that I'm reading, the amount of time I spend on social media, the amount of time I spend working compared to when I need rest or play or fun or whatever my needs are. So it's like, how can I release what has been old or known to me? And how can I now step forward into something new, not knowing what that might be, but knowing on the way there, I do have small choices to make within my own life, within my own day-to-day choices that will end up shaping this whole experience for me. Because it doesn't matter how far you get into change, there's always something that may be enticing you to come back. Maybe it's a partner, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a job because it pays good money. There's always something that can pull you back and that can stop you from going forward, because how do you know that going forward won't be better? You don't until you step into it. And this again, it comes back to trust. So this is not trust in a way where you bypass all your things. This is about learning to trust yourself in a way that you understand why you didn't trust yourself in the first place. So after we fall apart, that's stage one. We're into number two. Number two is the entering the void. So this is all about this void space of transition, which is unknown. It's like a place where we're floating around between, well, I was there and I'm not quite where I'm going. I'm just in between. I'm in the process. And entering the void is where you can realize that you actually want something different. This is the part where you realize, well, that thing that I didn't like could be changing now. And there could be like a sense of excitement because you've come past that kind of terrifying, chaotic, everything's falling apart. And there's this felt sense sometimes too that it's there for a reason. And part of this process can be just acknowledging that you're starting to do something different. You're starting to embrace something that's completely new, or you're opening to that. I'm getting curious to that. In stage two, this whole entering the void, it's still really normal to feel confused, a bit lost. And each stage of this can last as long as it needs to last until you've learned kind of that piece to get to the next level. Which brings me to stage three. Well, we're not entering the void anymore. We're actually in the void. We're in the thick of it. So this is stage three. This is where I see people more likely to do the work, to want to shift into purpose or question their direction. In the void of transition is like where it can feel like everything's happening or nothing's happening all at the same time. So you will be gathering information. Even if you feel like it's just not happening quick enough, you're still gathering information, perhaps about what you don't want, perhaps about processing the beliefs that you had into changing them. So in this part, there's a lot happening in the body. The brain is rewiring itself. Maybe we're building trust. And I like to think of this stage as like where you recognize the hurdle or the block to what has been in your way. And maybe there's like a new light being shone on that. And it's a beautiful opportunity to start to work on clearing that. In stage three, in this void of transition, where we're not out of the discomfort yet. Still uncomfortable, maybe with some little bursts of empowerment and more hope coming through. Stage four, I call the rebirthing. So part of this process here is the willingness to change, the willingness to be that new version, and to peel off that bit of ego, to become more of who you are without the mask on, without doing certain behaviors that make you likable. There's so many things in this area that it's like we're just stripping it all back. And the more you strip back, the more you emerge in that new rebirthed way. The beautiful thing about this phase is that there will be more clarity because you've shed some of the old, you've understood more, you've gathered more information, you know more about this loop, this process. And so when you come to this phase, it's where you start to gain clarity and you may gain momentum into forward movement as well. And I feel like we sense into that forward movement because we start to become aware of perhaps what's on the other side of this transition. Maybe we start to realize, oh, all that chaos, all that breakdown was happening so I could have what I was asking for in the first place. And I totally forgot that all of that was going on, or that I even asked for it, or that, my thoughts were creating that. So thoughts are super powerful. Our actions are really powerful, especially when our thoughts and actions are really lined up. And that's that alignment piece, when you know your values and you know your truth and you're willing to step forward into that. Which brings me to stage 5, embodying. So with these daily choices, from knowing what you know, entering that void space, getting through the stuckness, getting through that discomfort of not knowing or floating around a little bit, to then feeling that sense of coming out anew, this creates the embodiment, because you can start to actually align with action to bringing that thing into down back into the physical. So when we're in the inner world, we're actually in the upper realms. That's why we come out and up. And if you're thinking about the energy centers, we're traveling up. And if you're interested in the energy centers, I will also put a link to my 8-week course online. You can start that at any time, and it will give you more clarity to the energy centers. And so when we're in these daily practices, we're choosing in all the moments that we can, because we now have this new information. There's practical steps, because now you have the clarity piece. Now you know where you're going to. You've kind of bust through the unknown and you've had some revelations. And then that kind of kicks you into moving forward with that. And we hit stage 6, which is the last stage of that change transition. And this is when you're coming out of the transition now. You're not rebirthing. You've put some practical things into play, and you are aware. So you're more aware than what you were last time. There's a very good chance that you may still loop around the same pattern and just discover something a little bit deeper. Or eventually, I believe, certain patterns, we just stop looping in them, or we get a certain way around and we go back, rather than doing the whole journey around the circle. When we come into stage 6, which I call transcendence, we're kind of out of all of that. We're feeling more steady. We're feeling more grounded in ourselves, probably more connected to more of a rawer, realer version of who we are, without that mask being on, without that belief system, without that pattern there. So in the transcendence phase, we've liberated something, because we've got to the other side of it and we're doing things differently. And that's what change is all about. It's about learning and taking the lessons and implementing it and going through it in a way that we can be zoomed out and understanding, what phase am I in? And when I get to this stage 6 where I've transcended something, I've liberated myself. I've let something go, maybe even a pattern or a belief that's not even mine. It could just be a phrase that you heard on repeat when you were a child, like money doesn't grow on trees. And so you believe money doesn't grow on trees. So now you have a scarcity or lack mentality. And through that scarcity or lack mentality, you're struggling, you're meeting all these money challenges. And so once you realize and pull these patterns apart as we travel through them, whatever that pattern may be, we let life happen for us and not to us. Although we are an active participant in the growth, in the evolution of ourselves, we must be willing, ready to show up for that and to take accountability to shifting those things, into getting help, into getting support and learning to trust ourselves. There's many pieces to the change, and how to do change in a way that's resilient, rather than going into victim mentality or staying in that lack of trust, which means that you could be trying to develop your intuition your whole life and you never tap into those gifts. And my hope for everybody would be that we all get to tap into those gifts more and more and more, and be able to sit with ourselves and be able to be still and receive what it is we need, without having to keep seeking so much in the external. A lot of things that I see in the external, let's say facilitators that haven't met themselves as deeply as what perhaps someone seeking answers have, it's generic. It can be a generic process. It can be such a waste of energy, time, money, everything that energy is, that we put the power outside of ourselves when we're not tuned into this place, into our inner world. Our inner world is what is shaping our external world. I work with majority women, and so all I can speak to is from my lens of it. And a lot of women that I see that don't have that trust in their own intuition will attract partners that end up not being trustworthy, and it will show up in the external as a way to maybe reflect it back. Just for a moment, I want to talk about energy. So when we think about and feel into energy, we can get a sense of our intuition being instinctual. So with energy doesn't lie. If someone's saying something to you or presenting a certain way and you feel something different, that would be your instinctual nature, your gut instinct, your intuition giving you a signal that says, I'm not sure I fully believe that. There's something underneath that. There's something there. And whether you know that you're accessing your intuition in what way or not, it may be an interesting process to start to develop a sense of curiosity to what your style of intuition may be. Do you just sense it without knowing where that comes from? Do you see it? Do you dream about it? There's all these different ways to experience it, but we are energy before we're matter. If you've ever walked into a room and felt the room or felt that you didn't want to be in that place, there's something else that's giving you a signal. And the more we tune into that, the felt sense of things, the more we develop that trust towards ourselves as well. The more we stop ignoring ourselves and what we feel, the more trust that we will build towards all of these processes that I'm speaking about today. A question that I love that I wrote in my book is, what is inside you right now that is shaping what is going on around you? So this might be a time to grab that journal and write things down. What is in your external that is not working for you? What is showing up that frustrates you, that irritates you? These are all signals to something not being right for you or being out of alignment for you. There's also this paragraph, the very first one in chapter 8. It's called Inner World Awakening. And the first section is challenging and changing belief systems. And it says, in a world of outdated stories and inherited unconscious behaviors, be one who doesn't lose yourself, one to love who you are, one that doesn't need validation because you deeply know you are whole already exactly as you are. Learn as best you can to recognize the accumulated falsities in your program that do not belong to you. Be willing to learn a new way forward. Be willing to move towards change. Be one to choose the path for yourself and lean into supporting yourself by finding the answers you seek within. Be one who continues to ask questions to all the parts of you so you begin to change the story and keep centered in a world designed for following. And if all else fails, just be. So those last two words, just be. Developing that practice of sitting with ourselves and being rather than doing is such an important aspect of knowing our inner world, traversing the inner world, knowing who we are as that expansive nature, the nature of our soul, the nature of our purpose. It all comes from this place. And so if all else fails, just take a moment and find stillness, find that sanctuary within yourself that you can tap into that place just with one breath in, and feel yourself moving to a space that you can receive unlimited amounts of support, love, anything you need. It's all there waiting for you. The possibilities are absolutely infinite. And I don't say that in a bypassing way, because I do believe we need to travel well. We need to travel up to these places, and we need to also be able to travel back down and ground it in and embody it as well, and integrate newness into our life. We need to know how to do these processes if we're going to choose change, if we're going to choose permanent, lasting healing and rewiring of the brain. And if we're going to challenge our behaviors and change our belief systems to things that were instilled in us, to things that now we want to believe. We want to believe in ourselves. We do need to kind of pull apart all those blocks that have been in the way. And a big part of that process, which I hope that you've felt today, is trust. Trust in yourself, and to discern with your felt sense, with your energetics, and to know that you are completely supported in this whole process. one thing that years ago that I always forgot to do was ask. Asking for help doesn't come easy to all of us. Receiving support doesn't come easy to all of us. Trusting ourselves, like these things don't always come easy, but take the lessons and the learnings from whatever part feels a bit sticky or a bit more resistance to you. And that's the part that might just need a little more love and support and offerings. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your willingness to listen and to explore and be curious with all parts of yourself, and that liberating journey that we are on to heal ourselves. And every time we heal a part of ourselves, we help to heal what's happening in the world. If you are learning to be still with yourself, if you're learning to meditate, anything like that, I'm going to put a free gift for you in the show notes, a free meditation. So you can listen to a guided meditation and be guided into that place of stillness, so you can start to really feel what that feels like for yourself. So I hope you enjoy that. The next episode will be the last on season 1 of the Glow podcast. There will be another season, but this last episode will be a big wrap up, and it will be our connection to divinity, divine timing, and just that more into the inner world. We get to explore this a little bit more before we close season 1. So if there's anything that you've heard in any of these episodes and you want to send me an email, you'll find how to contact me in the show notes as well. And please let me know anything that you would like me to uncover, or anything that I can explore or help you to be curious to in the coming season. And before I go, remember that you are whole already. Remember that you have choice. You are not alone, and stay curious.